I can summarize episode 86 of the Huberman Lab podcast in 4 words. Alcohol is killing you. If you want to find out how, keep watching. There are 3 types of alcohol. Isopropyl, used for cleaning and sterilizing. Methanol, used as the building block for plastics, paints, and other various items. And ethanol. Only the third one, ethanol, is fit for human consumption. And when I say fit, I'm using that term very lightly. See, ethanol itself is toxic to the human body. For that reason, when it's ingested, it needs to be converted into acetate, which is basically a pure, non-nutritive energy the body can use. This occurs in the liver. The problem here is that in order to become acetate, the ethanol must first be converted into acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is even worse than ethanol. It's a poison that kills any cell it comes into contact with, regardless of the cell type. Now, the cells in the liver are very good at this conversion process, but they're just cells. The more ethanol they convert, the more of them die and the liver starts to get overwhelmed. This causes acetaldehyde to start building up in your body and traveling to places it shouldn't be, like the brain. Ethanol, acetaldehyde, and acetate are water and fat soluble. This allows them to pass right through the blood-brain barrier, which is the little fence our brain has to protect it from dangerous chemicals.
Don't cross this line!
Acetaldehyde goes everywhere in the brain, but has a certain preference to invade brain regions involved in thinking, memory, and behavior. This is why the more drinks you have, the more impulsive you become, perhaps even blacking out at some point. An interesting note here is that the more people drink, the more physical growth they experience in the brain, such that they become more impulsive, stressed, and anxious even when they're not drinking. Thankfully, this is generally able to be corrected following abstinence from alcohol for a period of 2 to 6 months. Of course, this depends on your level of alcohol consumption before that. There's 3 types of drinkers we need to define before going forward. Non-drinkers. This is anyone who either doesn't drink at all or has 1 or 2 a month. Mild chronic drinkers. These are people who have an average of 1 to 2 a night. Now, this doesn't have to be every night, just so long as it averages out appropriately. Heavy chronic drinkers. This is anyone who has more than 2 to 3 average per night. Due to dopamine and serotonin effects, when most people drink, they first experience a sharp spike in feeling good, followed by a gradual plummeting to sedated and depressed behavior.
It's the biggest piece of dog.
No matter how many drinks you have after that spike, once the plummeting starts, it's impossible to regain that high. Except in these cases. Certain people, including heavy chronic drinkers and genetically predispositioned individuals, get more energized and happy the more they drink. The serotonin graph we see here is essentially flipped. These people are highly subject to alcoholism and should take caution when dealing with alcohol. If you have a close relative with a predisposition, it's more likely that you do too. Another important risk factor for alcohol use disorder is age. The younger people begin drinking, the more likely a dependency on alcohol is formed. While no amount of alcohol is safe, having a drink every now and again is unlikely to cause any major health issues. Mild and heavy chronic drinkers, however, should be aware of the gut microbiome. Normally only brought up in yogurt commercials, the gut microbiome is very real, doing things like supporting the immune system and signaling the brain to release serotonin and dopamine appropriately. The gut microbiome is also very impacted by alcohol. When acetaldehyde makes its way into the gut microbiome, it massacres bacteria. While this in itself is bad, the acetaldehyde in the gut, along with pro-inflammatory molecules it causes in the liver, thin out the gut lining, leading to leaky gut.
Come on!
While there's tons of good bacteria in the gut, there's also bad bacteria, and when the lining gets thin, they're able to make their escape into the bloodstream and go cause havoc elsewhere. The tool you can use to help the gut microbiome is 2 to 4 servings of low-sugar fermented foods. This includes kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, and certain yogurts with a lot of active bacteria. This should probably be done in general, but definitely if you're a chronic drinker. The hangover. Hangovers are due to a multitude of factors, including disrupted sleep even after 1 drink, and the constriction of blood vessels when the alcohol wears off. Before we discuss the cures, let's debunk some myths. First, the amount of sugar in an alcoholic beverage does not determine how bad your hangover will be. Here's the list of hangover severity Huberman provided, with brandy being the worst. At the very bottom, we find the disgusting sounding ethanol diluted in orange juice. If sugar was a factor, then this drink should be higher on the list, right? Well, you know what is increasing? Congeners. These are the things like nitrites and other substances that give the alcohol its flavor. While these do have impacts on your brain, their biggest involvement is disrupting the gut microbiome. So our first step to curing the hangover should be guzzling down some yogurt and kimchi as we discussed before. But what about some other hangover cures? Well, there's not much study into it, but 1 to 3 minutes of cold exposure could be one way to help hangovers. Due to heightened epinephrine epinephrine in the bloodstream. Now, we need to be very careful when doing this and should never try cold exposure while drinking. You see, normally cold water increases your body temperature, but when alcohol is in your system, it reverses, such that your body temperature plummets in correlation with the cold. This is caused by a disruption in the brain area that regulates your body temperature. Always perform cold exposure safely and with your health in mind first. Our second cure is to pound some energy drinks before going out for the night. Alcohol is a diuretic, meaning it causes the body to secrete water and electrolytes at exceeding levels. Getting your electrolyte levels optimal before drinking will help to offset this reaction. So, let's talk about the really bad parts of alcohol consumption. First, the more you drink, the thinner your brain becomes. Important parts of your brain actually start to die off. Second, it throws off your hormones, increasing the conversion of testosterone into estrogen in both men and women. This is especially bad since alcohol greatly increases your risk of cancer, namely estrogen-related breast cancer. Due to alcohol's toxicity, it can alter DNA methylation and gene expression. In fact, Huberman states that there's a proposed 4 to 13% increase in breast cancer for every 10 grams of alcohol consumed. Unfortunately, there's no way to alleviate this risk of cancer other than to stop drinking entirely. There may be evidence, however, that consuming higher levels of folate and vitamin B12 will help to mitigate the risk slightly. Finally, as we all should know, you should never drink if pregnant. The growth of a baby is a highly orchestrated and specific process. Alcohol exposure can and will lead to permanent diminished development of the brain, limb, organs, etc. of a fetus, typically leading to something called fetal alcohol syndrome. Huberman's purpose for this episode wasn't to demonize alcohol, but rather to just state the facts. The only safe amount to drink is none. Thanks for watching.